Well, what's up again, guys? Brian here at 3Chair here to bring you another episode of People's Questions. We got a pretty massive episode here for episode 280 from a lot of individuals. I believe even a number of newbies and regulars. So this should be interesting and fun. So starting off real simple, coming from the first question. You might be a newbie. I don't recognize your name, but you go by the name of Good Neutral Evil Hunt. And just so you know, I read your little comment that you said after your question. Guys, don't ever feel shy to ask me any question about any type of video. Trust me, I'm an open book to just about all of you guys. I mean, even with a number of certain personal questions. So don't be shy to ask a question anytime. But you want to know, you were curious as for why I said I would do no more Infamous fights. I don't think I'm gonna do any more Infamous fights simply because I've already done the one match that really matters within the franchise, which is to do Cole versus Delson. I've already done it twice, both when they're either evil or good. And outside of that, there's really not really interesting matchups that you could put together. I mean, I'm sure nobody would want to see a match between, say, Nyx or Fetch or Eugene or Kessler. I mean, there's only so many characters we could use. I mean, in Infamous 1 and 2, we could only use a maximum of 4 characters. That would be either Cole, Kessler, Quo, and Nyx. And in Infamous Second Son, we could only use Delson, Fetch, Eugene, and Augustine. And the fact that we don't get to play as those characters makes it really, really hard to really figure out exactly how they like to operate. Now, that's not necessarily impossible because I have done with characters that you can't necessarily play as, but it's also due to a lack of visual sources. I don't really like to use characters that I can't find a minimum of at least 30 different images, either it's fan artwork or pictures from the game, as well as a minimum of about 10 to 15 minutes of footage. So if a character doesn't really fit within that those limitations, then it's probably not a safe character to use in a versus matchup. But if I was going to do a third and final Infamous matchup, if there was a demand for it, just to kind of ease or please the Delson fans that think I'm a Delson hater, which I am not, which I would be more than happy to see him return in a follow-up to Infamous Second Son, I would probably do a final rematch between Cole and Delson, but instead of using Cole from Infamous 2, I would use Cole from Infamous 1. That way, we pretty much have one character, one game, no comic book series, no extra stories. It's just at the end of their single main appearances. But I would only do that if the demand was high enough. Next question comes from Goku's son, and your question was really, really hard to kind of word. So I'm going to say it nice and slowly so I understand it, because if I say it in my normal speed, I'm not going to understand the question. So here we go. Which saga of Goku do I think each version of Dante is on par with or stronger than? So pretty much you want me to take all these different versions of Goku and compare them to all the different versions of Dante and pick and decide which one is either on par or stronger. Well, I'll be honest, outside of maybe Teen Goku or Kid Goku, I think every interpretation of Goku would be stronger than every interpretation of Dante. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dante is a half-breed. So I don't even think that he would be nearly as strong as someone who would be like a full demon in terms of strength or power. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's taken down full-fledged demons before, but in terms of actual strength, I don't think he's really on par with someone like a Super Saiyan who, as we know, Saiyans gradually get strong over time. And with the amount of training that Goku does, it would be almost impossible for Dante to keep up with him. I mean, when Goku is not fighting, he is training or eating, and even when he eats, he works out so much he stays in insane shape, while when Dante's not out demon hunting, he's in his shop eating pizza, wanting to drink strawberry drinks, you know. So I'm fairly certain most versions of Goku would be very, very much stronger than most versions of Dante. The next question comes from Demetrius Puford. He wants to know, if I were to put Galen Merrick in any of the Final Fantasy games, which would it be and why? There are two games in particular I think he would fit very well in. The reason I would put him in these two is because I don't think he's so overpowered that he would pretty much dominate everyone in those two games. I think that he would be a valuable character, but there's certainly a number of characters I don't think he would be able to beat on his own. He would definitely need help from the other characters in order to win. And I think the two games I would pick is probably Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy 15. I mean, when you look at his powers or his usual form of combat, he has lightsabers. He's like one lightsaber, and he has like force lightning, force repulses, force push, force pull, basic telekinesis, and that's not so much OP for a lot of these characters that are really good with magic. Like, I don't think he would be able to at all take on any of the tier 1 bosses in either one of those games. He would definitely need some help, and I think that in Final Fantasy 15 in particular, there are a number of forces that I think that there's no way he'd be able to handle them by himself. He would definitely need the help of the other 4 characters in order to survive. So I would probably put him in those 2 games. The next question comes from Jalen Bradford. You want to know, if Albert Wesker was in Devil May Cry 3, what do I think would happen if he met Virgil instead of Arkham? I honestly don't know what would happen. I don't know why Wesker would even want to interact with Virgil. Wow, Wesker's a solo person, and Virgil was just kind of minding his own business, and I don't really think Albert Wesker would really be able to help him in any capacity. So I think the worst thing that would happen is he would be wandering around this library. He would see Virgil probably walk up to him. Virgil would say, "Get the hell out of here," and I think he would just walk away because he's just like, okay, you clearly don't want my company, so I'll just leave you alone. Next question comes from, this one was interesting. Your name is Diadrive CJ, and you had, without question, the most interesting question sent to me. Now, okay, you guys gotta work with me here because the answer I'm going to give, it's not based off of any history. It's simply based off of my experience with certain game franchises. So level with me with this one. And you want to know, if I were somehow transported back to the time of the Three Kingdoms era of China, and I would be able to understand and speak the language, I would also be in great physical peak, not having slowed, aged, or degraded at all. Around the time of the last 2 campaigns against the Yellow Turban Rebellion, if I were to sought after as either a warrior or a strategist when the Three Kingdoms properly split, which side would I mainly fight with? Wu, Shu, or Wei? Or Jen, if you survive till then. Okay, now, okay, but you gotta understand something. I'm not really too... my knowledge of Chinese history is very limited. I'm more interested in Japanese history. So my knowledge of the Three Kingdom War of China is based off the Dynasty Warriors franchise, which I believe I've only played about 3 of those games. So being perfectly honest, not based off of any history, just based off what I've seen, which I know those games are heavily exaggerated. I don't even know if it depicts the characters properly. But if I could pick a faction to join, I would probably pick Shu. For 2 reasons. They're both pretty funny. Number 1, all the members in Shu are wearing green. And green is my favorite color. And number 2, I think Liu Bei, if that's what his name is, I think he seems like a really nice guy. I think the other 2, especially Cao Cao, seems a little bit too power hungry, like those evil warlords of the past. So I probably wouldn't want to work with him. Again, I don't know if the way they depict these factions is accurate. Liu Bei may have been a complete asshole. Maybe the faction of Shu were complete tyrants. It is based just strictly off the games. I would probably go with Shu because they wore green, and Liu Bei seemed like a really nice guy, and the people around him seemed like really nice people. Again, not based off of any history. That's probably who I would want to join with. I know, kind of funny. Next question comes from Ace, simply Ace. And you want to know, if Dante was in any Final Fantasy game, which game would he be most fitting in? Ugh. That's a tough one. I gotta be honest, putting Dante in a Final Fantasy game is hard because Dante is not much of a team player. He's more of a solo person. So any Final Fantasy game you put him in, he would have to be solo. Strictly solos. You couldn't put him, I don't think you could really put him in any of the main games. But I guess if there was one game you could put him in, I think he'd be a solid fit for the Dissidia franchise. I think he would fit perfectly into that sort of fighting game system. But I don't think he would fit very well in any of the primary games. So I guess Dissidia is what I would go with. I think he would work as a pretty solid DLC character. Next question comes from Centrist Arpina. You want to know, which is one video game world that I would hate to live in the most? A video game world I would hate to live in the most? Ooh. I probably would not like to live... I probably would not want to live within... Damn, that's a tough one. I don't know, just off the top of my head, probably Mortal Kombat. Probably because, you know, the threat of invasion from the other realm seems kind of dangerous. Obviously, I'm not much of a Mortal Kombat fighter, so I'd be pretty useless. So, yeah, I guess Mortal Kombat, because, you know, just I wouldn't be of much use. Next question comes from Matt Cruz. He wants to know, what is a video game that I've played that deserves more recognition to the general gaming audience? I think a game that is very, very underrated is the game Singularity. Most of you probably don't remember it, but basically it was this game involving kind of time travel, where you were given this device where it allowed you to jump between time periods, and it was basically kind of like an alternate timeline involving World War II, I believe. I may be wrong. It's been a while since I've played it, but I think one of the craziest gameplay elements was the ability to actually kind of change things depending on what time you were in. So you could either like rewind something in time and kind of de-age it, or you could age it extremely well, and it was just a really, really crazy game mechanic. I think it's a very, very underrated game because I haven't really heard anyone really talk about it, but I really enjoyed it. The next question comes from Hugo Blood 881. You want to know, if I could put Kyle Katarn against any swordsman in the entire Final Fantasy series, who would it be and why? Kyle Katarn. I would probably put him up against Sephiroth, simply because Sephiroth is the best, and if you're gonna take a battle master like him from Luke Skywalker's new established Jedi Order, who better to test his skills against than probably the single best sword fighter in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. So I would probably put him up against Sephiroth. I think he would lose to Sephiroth, but I think he'd put up a pretty decent fight. Probably better than most would expect. Next question comes from JayBat, and you want to know, which Metal Gear Solid figure would I like to have? Actually, it is a mixture of two figures. I would love to get this combination of Big Boss and the boss fighting and Metal Gear Solid 3. There's a picture of it right here. They're sold separately, but I would love that picture. I would just love those two figures together, because the boss and Big Boss are my #1 and #2 favorite characters within the whole franchise, and with Metal Gear Solid 3 being my favorite entry in the franchise of all time, as well as being my favorite video game of all time, the conflict at the end of the game is just epic, and just to have those two figures together would just it would blow my mind. Next question comes from gotta answer that later. And actually it's gonna be the last question of the episode, and it comes from Abel, and you basically want to know, how did I get my job? Okay, for those of you that don't know, I currently am a mechanic that works at a bowling alley that is actually, I recently just moved really close, like less than 3 minutes away from my job. I've been working there surprisingly for about 4 years now. And basically how I got the job was, although my father never admitted it, I'm sure he did, I'm sure my dad made it appear. My dad had been working with the company that he'd been working with for about 22 years, and he had a lot of connections and he had a lot of friends, and I think he recognized that I had spent several months looking for a job. I was trying to look for a job that was close to where I used to live, which was really on the other side of town, which the first job I ever worked at was at a Walgreens, which was really like less than a mile away, so that was good. But I guess over time it became clear I probably couldn't get a job that was that close, so I gradually just picked the company that my dad had been working with, just, you know, just to test my luck. And I'm 100% sure my dad pulled some strings to make a job up here. And the reason I know that is because everyone I spoke to about getting the job automatically knew who I was. I mean, I had never seen or met these people, but they somehow knew who I was. So my best guess is not only did my dad make this job up here, he told them who I was, and since everyone really loved my dad. He was probably one of the hardest workers that I guess the company had ever seen. Very popular guy, and I guess that's how I got the job. The funny thing is that before he passed away, I was going to have one more conversation about my job. It wasn't going to be very positive, but you know, I've been working at there ever since, so I really have my dad to thank for my current job, which I gotta say, pays very well. It's a very simple job. It can get very stressful at times. In fact, it's stressful most of the time, but I am thankful that I do have it. And it's going to be perhaps maybe a little bit sad when I have to say goodbye to it, probably sometime next year when I move away from Vegas, hopefully for the final time. And so that's pretty much the semi-long story of how I got the job I'm currently working at. And with that, those are all the questions that you guys sent in for this episode. I'd like to thank all of you guys for making this episode possible. If you guys have any more questions you'd like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to send them in the comments down below. Make sure you get them into me before next Wednesday, before I start filming this. And like always, I want to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.